How to sew the Mini Tote, part of the Wrapped in Style kit collection from Amber Makes. First you need to start by cutting out the pieces from the main panel. Cut out the Mini Tote back and the Mini Tote front, and there are 2 Mini Tote handles. Now, using your own lining fabric, place the Mini Tote front and back on top and cut round them to make the 2 lining pieces, the front lining and the back lining. Now let's get on to making the tote. Place the Mini Tote front outer and the Mini Tote front lining right sides facing so all raw edges are matching, and pin together across the top edge. Sew together along this top edge. Once that's done, open out the 2 pieces and press the seam open. Repeat this with the Mini Tote back outer and the Mini Tote back lining. Again, open out the seam once it's stitched and press it open. Now, place the joined outers and linings right sides facing so that the outers are touching and the linings are touching. Match up the seams at the top on one side and pin together, then turn it around and match up the top seams on the other side and pin together. Now continue pinning all the way round. Pin the outer together down the sides and across the bottom. Make sure all the raw edges are matching. Now you need to leave a turning gap in the bottom of the lining. About 2 inches is okay, and make sure it's in the centre. So mark this with a pen and then sew together from one side of the turning gap all the way around, finishing at the other side of the turning gap. Once this is done, put your fingers inside and grab hold of the bottom corner of the outer and pull the whole bag right sides out through the gap. Now push out the corners with your fingers because it's easier to do this to get it nice and neat and the corners right in the edges before you sew the turning gap closed. Now turn the edges of the turning gap under by 1/4 inch and pin them together. Now sew together across the turning gap. Once this is done, push the lining inside the outer. Push the corners right inside so the corners of the lining are touching the corners of the outer, and arrange it so that the top seam is lying right on the edge. If you roll it gently between your fingers, you can get it to lie on the edge. Once this is done, top stitch all the way around the edge to neaten. Adding the handles to your Mini Tote. Take 1 Mini Tote handle and fold both short ends over by 1/2 inch to the wrong side. You can measure this with a tape measure and then press. Fold the other short end over by 1/2 inch to the wrong side and press. Now fold the Mini Tote handle in half lengthways with wrong sides facing so that you match those raw long edges and also the turned under short edges. This will create a crease down the centre. Now open it up and fold the one raw long edge in to meet that centre crease and press. Turn it round and fold the other raw long edge in to meet at the centre crease and press. Now, making sure those raw edges are staying folded under, fold the whole thing in half to encase the raw edges and the short ends that you turned under earlier, and press it together. Now measure 1 inch from the right hand side and mark this position with a pin. Measure 1 inch from the other end and mark this position with a pin. Put the pin through all the layers to hold it together. Now top stitch along the edge between the pins only, leaving the other ends undone. Repeat this with the other handle as well. Now we're going to sew the handles onto the bag. So measure 1/4 inch in from the left hand side and 3/4 inch down from the top, and place a pin where these points match. Now open up the folded under end of the handle and pin the left hand corner of it where the pin is marked on the tote front. This means that the edge of the handle will be positioned 1/4 inch from the left hand side and 3/4 inch down from the top. Repeat this to measure and mark the other side, 1/4 inch from the side and 3/4 inch from the top. Take the other end of the handle, open out the end and put the right hand corner where that pin is and pin it into place. Now you need to sew it together all the way round. Now, it's a little bit fiddly to do this on the machine, so I did it by hand. If you use a length of sewing cotton in a sharp sewing needle and just work a few little slip stitches along the side, across the top, I just worked a simple back stitch. It doesn't really matter if you make these stitches into the lining as well, because it'll be hidden on the inside of the back. Just work very small stitches. The aim really is that you keep them small and neat. So you just make a small stitch on the front and then run it through a little bit of fabric so that you make a longer stitch on the back. I stitched it in place about 1/2 inch up the sides of the handle, then all the way along the bottom edge and all the way along the top edge. Once you've stitched it in place all the way round, you can secure the thread by just working 3 or 4 stitches on top of each other. Then cut the end of the thread and your handle is attached. Repeat this to sew the other end of the handle in the same way, and then to sew the other handle to the back of the bag. And your bag is now finished to pop a little gift in.